Well, hello. We're here, and if you're wondering why I'm carrying the laptop, it's my microphone. So welcome to OWASP Ottawa for our March meetup. It's good to see you. I'm just going to rattle through a couple of our slides to talk about the chapter and what we do and some general things, and then I will introduce our speaker, and then I will not be talking anymore. No. One moment, please. Okay, I have to go backwards. I'm going to go back in time. So my name's Garth. I'm one of the co-leads for the chapter. We meet monthly. We're going to be meeting up in Canada in April, so stay tuned for that. I want to talk to you quickly about a couple of things, like all the perks you get if you become a member. So that will include things like this list, as well as access to... No, I'm thinking of something else. We don't get access to the actual training anymore. They broke up with us. Oh, right, okay. Everyone does it for free. It's free already, right. Okay, so it's free. Thank you. Today I learned. There are other things that you get with membership, including access to running OWASP in terms of access to facilities like other training, discounts on Meetup, or on discounts on cons, conventions, global OWASP ACCEP events, and things like that. I apologize, it's been a hell of a week. This is all the details to us. That QR code will not try to sell you cryptocurrencies. It will actually point you to our chapter website. If you have a talk you want to talk about, we're interested to hear about it. We accept talks of all sizes, shapes, and flavors, from 15 minutes to a full presentation. I've passed out cards for those online. These are all our social and anti-social medias, so connect to us. We have our own Slack. OWASP, Mother OWASP has a Slack. We have our own Slack just because we were there first. And so if you're looking for work in the cyber field, we'll have a Slack channel associated with that. The director has office hours, and this gives you access to that. Our Slack has a self-registration. It will cost you nothing, and no salesperson will call. And I wanted to thank our volunteers who do everything from our DJ, Mel, who spins our tunes, to Rick, who does these PSAs that I fumble around with, and help carry the banners in for me. Here are some of the events coming up, and some releases. So who here has used OWASP AMAS or AMAS? So these are all great tools, but this is an amazing tool. If you're trying to do subdomain enumeration, doing open source intelligence, that finds an amazing amount of stuff. But for reasons you're about to hear, I have to use the phrase OWASP Zap. So if you're doing pen testing, if you're doing web application pen testing, you have to use that tool. That is one of the premier tools in the industry for web application pen testing. I would like to now introduce our speaker. I would like to welcome home Tanya Janca, who was the chapter lead when I started volunteering. But she decided that Victoria was a nicer place, so a warmer place. So I'm very pleased to welcome home my friend, Tanya Janca. So we are going to set up your slides on that. to get rid of this.
Welcome to everyone who came late.
I need to switch the mic back to you now.
Super important piece of information you need to know. If you ask a question with a maple candy, everyone can have stickers. And the best 2 questions get a book. And I'm going to tell you which book you get, because if you don't choose my book, I'll be very sad. And so if I don't give you a choice, then obviously you chose my book. The other book's good too, and it is about threat modeling. Anyone here know about threat modeling? Nice, we got some hands, that's good. Okay, who here has seen some of the Star Wars? Okay, so at least half of you think this book's good and you don't even know it yet. Are we doing it?
You're doing it.
All right. Okay, and so do I do like this button for next, probably?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I'm Tanya, and I want to talk about building security champions. So I'm going to explain what the heck those people are and why they're probably great, and we want some. Let's see. This is how we can scale our security programs. And so my first Security Champions program was by accident, and it was at Elections Canada, where I just started having a favorite dev on every team, and then I only talked to them, and I trained them and showed them stuff and talked to them all the time. And then eventually I was like, oh, you could do that on purpose? And I learned a lot since then. And so we're going to talk about how to scale your team and your program, because we never get enough security folks to do all the jobs that we actually need doing. And certainly not enough money. And we're going to talk about what security champions are and how we build them up, because they're not ready the first time you meet them. You have to build them up into champions. And then there are maple candies if you ask a question. See, I told you it was very important. I didn't even realize I made a slide for this. Okay, so the recipe we're going to follow is we recruit them, we engage them, and I'll explain what that means, but basically we want to make them interested. So they're not like, oh God, I regret saying yes to Tanya when she gave me a bagel. This was not worth the bagel. We teach them, we recognize them, and reward them. So recognizing and rewarding, they're kind of linked, and I'll explain that. And then we don't stop, because the biggest problem I see is people start a program, they're really excited, and after 3 months, they're tired, and they just don't do anything for a year. And then it falls apart. Okay, so this is me. I'm Tanya. When I brush my hair, I look good. I don't even work there anymore. Okay, so these are really old slides. So I wrote a book. I've worked in tech a long time. I do a lot of stuff. So see the last one, Nerd at Large on the internet. That's what I do. So I talk about AppSec, I write blogs and books, and I speak, and I'm very excited about this as a topic. So that's enough of me. You're like, we know her. She's literally here. So the problem. So this doesn't just apply to software security. This actually applies to pretty much all of security. There's just not enough people to do all the jobs. Who here worked somewhere where you have just as many security folks as you need and you don't need any help at all? What, no hands? Come on. Usually there's one person that's like, haha, just kidding. So there's not enough security folks. GitHub released a study. So we used to believe that it was 100 software developers per security person. But GitHub, who, let's face it, they know a lot of developers there, they estimate it's closer to 500 per security person. And so that means we can't just work harder. We have to do efforts to try to scale, or we're always the bottleneck slowing everyone else down. And so scaling your team and your program. So we know there aren't enough. And so I thought lifting weights felt like a scaling thing. I don't know. That's okay. So security champions, what the heck do they do? So this is the technical definition. A security champion is a member of the team that takes the responsibility of acting as the primary advocate and communicator for security within your team and acting as the first line of defense for security issues. That sounds very good. But I like to think of it as the person that is pumped and excited and interested and curious about security. They are the person who hassles Eric, who annoys Eric. No, who keeps asking Eric if they could be on their team until he says yes. I used to work with Eric. So the person who's most excited about security, they want to read the book, they want to fix the bug, they ask the questions, they come to every single lunch and learn. They're that person, and you want to get to know this person. And there's a bunch of them. If you give them the opportunities to reveal themselves, you will see there's a whole bunch of them at every office where they're like, that's neat. How did you do it? I'm like, come here and I'll show you. And so what is a security champion? So they communicate on behalf of our team. Because when Tanya, the security person, comes to your desk, you're like, stranger danger. Other security folks have been mean to me in the past. She looks nice, she's smiling, but she might be mean. But when the person who you've sat with and worked with and had coffee with and who's on your team says, hey, I thought we weren't supposed to do that anymore, it's different. So when they communicate, they deliver the security messages. When they teach, when they share, it's not the same as when I do it, because they are their peer. And I am that person from the security team who seems not that bad, but they're not sure at first. It takes a while to build trust, but this person's already built trust. They are my point of contact. They tell me when things are going very badly. So they'll deliver messages back to us and keep me up to date. And I tell people, when you start a Security Champions program, okay, so at first, you're like, hey, what are you working on? They're like this. I'm like, what are you going to work on next? They're like that. I'm like, do you need any help? They're like, no, I'm good. And then like month 4, this thing happened, Tanya. And you need to brace yourself very bad. And it's good that they're telling you, if that makes sense. They're telling you about a thing you wouldn't have found out about otherwise. And the first time this happened, I freaked out. And then the person didn't want to tell me stuff anymore. So I've learned to play it cool. I'm like, okay, so instead of using the security stuff we gave you to use, you wrote your own. Okay, yes, we could probably do a little better. And I've learned to be more relaxed and less freaky outy. And they're your advocate. So like I said, they are the peer of everyone else on their team. They are a software developer just like everyone else on their team. And so they perform security work for their team, but with my help, but they advocate for security. And so, as I said before, and I'm repeating it for a reason, when Tanya, the person from the security team, comes and says, please, I'd really like you to do this from now on, they take it under consideration. But when they go to do it and the person next to them in the other cubicle is like, hey, buddy, we don't do that now. Remember, it's completely different than if I said it, especially if I said it with that tone. They'd be like, that mean lady from security? So when they advocate for security, it's more powerful than when the security team does it, usually, unless they're very unpopular, but that's rare. So let's build up our champions. So we're going to recruit them, engage them, teach them, then recognize and reward them, which are slightly different. And then we give high fives. That's the whole thing. So this, we're going to come back to this over and over again so you know where we're at and like how close you can be to escaping. So recruiting champions. So the number one rule in recruiting champions is that we actually ask for volunteers and we don't force people to do it against their will. Who here has been voluntold for stuff at work and it sucks? Yeah, a bunch of hands, right? You're not really a volunteer. Your boss is like, hey, you were late for the meeting. Awesome. Thanks for joining the safety committee. That's not a good way to get people that will actually advocate on your behalf. That's not a really good way to find the person that's super curious. So that's number one. We want to attract the right people. And then number 2 is ensure that the managers are actually on board for this because they will literally stop the person from doing the security work. You do not want to compete with someone's direct supervisor. Because if I come to their desk, I'm like, hey, can you do this thing? And they're like, sure. And then their boss is like, no, the deadline's Friday. If I were them, I would do what their boss says because their boss decides if they continue to get paid, if they continue to be employed, they can affect their livelihood. I don't want them to have to choose between what I want and what their boss wants. So it's really important to get managers on board. And I've had to do some of this sometimes where I spend so much time trying to get the managers on board, but then eventually the employees can come. If the manager is not on board, you're essentially picking a fight for this person every day and it sucks and you won't get what you want. Okay, so how do we recruit people? How do we find people that are interested? Okay. So I like to ask for volunteers, like I said. So we don't appoint people, or I don't appoint people without consent. We provide opportunities for them to reveal themselves. And so I'm up here giving a talk. When I gave my first talk, I was terrified. I was so terrified. And I remember I was like talking and I was like, and my heart was being really loud. And I'm not kidding. I'm like, how can they even hear me? Because my heart's being so loudly. And I was like, maybe I'm going to die. I did not die clearly, but I thought there was a possibility that I could die, and I didn't. And so then I did it again and again. And eventually I was like, actually, this is pretty fun. now that I'm not too afraid. But I give talks and that attracts people. You might have a different thing that you're good at. So I've seen people who have, like, I have this friend named Clint and he has a newsletter. And he basically just reads all of the news each week and summarizes the articles he thinks are the coolest. That's it. He has like 14,000 subscribers and his newsletter is like 2 years old. He just does the thing he's really passionate and excited about and it attracts people. And so for me, speaking works. For you, it might be sending an email to them. It might be you always attending their meetings and talking to them afterwards. You have to find the thing that's right for you. For me, public speaking works. I hope someone on your team is fearless or is willing to do the fearful thing anyway and talk. The more you do it, the less scary it is for most people. This might sound dumb, but add your email signature. So I used to work with this guy named Lucas, and I was like, let's just change our signatures. And so we changed it, like our names, and then it said, I'm looking for security champions. Is this you? Ask me how. He's like, no one's going to answer us. So the next week, he's like, 4 people answered me, and 2 of them became champions. We had another person recently say, oh, we actually have a person on my team that's really awesome. Can I suggest them? Because I think like they're always asking about security stuff. They're always volunteering. Like I think they'd be great. Can I ask them if they're interested? I'm like, yes. And so like reach out to the managers and say, is there someone that you know is interested? Don't force someone to do it. Like be very clear. But if there's someone that you think might really be into this, let us know. So I like lunch and learns in public speaking. It's not for everyone. Anyone who asks your team questions constantly, that person, especially if they don't need to talk to you. So it's different if you're all over them and you're like, this pen test report, you must get all these facts now. They have to talk to you. But if they are reaching out to your team, that is a likely potential person that wants to be a champion. Use interesting titles. So I used to have very boring talk titles, and then I would not get accepted to conferences. So this might sound dumb, but the title you choose is really important. So I had this talk where I was like, application security foundations. And my friend Sharif was like, that name is lame. You have a slide where you're like pushing left, like a boss, where you're being silly and dumb. Use that. And that started getting accepted everywhere. I had another talk called Securing Modern Applications. Reject, reject, reject. I changed literally nothing except the title. Purple is the new black. That means nothing. That means absolutely nothing. And then securing modern applications accepted 80% of the time. So this sounds really stupid, but you choose an interesting title and you'll get way more people showing up. I had to learn this the hard way. And I like to adopt a mantra. So I have this friend, Ray, and he tells developers, you're my customer, I serve you. And when I adopted this mantra of, it's my job to help you do your job securely. That's my job. It's my job to help all of you do your jobs safer. And so if giving you advice is helpful, if writing or testing or whatever the things are that I can do to help you do better, that's my job. And so when we change it from you must jump through these hoops or you're not going to prod to I'm going to help you make better software, people like us better. So that helped. So now you're probably thinking, what if I don't have enough people? It's okay, because stage number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, you will continue to find more champions. So let's say at this point, you're like, I have 6 champions, but I need 20. It's okay. You may commence number 2. So number 2 is engage. What do I mean by engage? So who here watches a lot of Star Trek? So like, I don't know if you remember, like Jean-Luc would be like, engage. Little different than that, but it's close. Okay, so it means to attract or occupy or involve. I want to attract them to security. I want to get them interested in security. But it also means participate or become involved with. So I want to know what they're up to. So if I have potentially like 18 or 20 champions, I want to know like what projects are you working on? Are you going to do a new technology? What's happening over there? So that I can see where I can fit in and help. And so I want the engagement to go both ways. So I'm not just trying to be like interesting and entertain them. I want it to go both ways. I want them to feel like I care. And so how do we do this? So this is one of the things that got me really interested. So I had joined the security team and I was like, this is so exciting. And then we had a security incident. And I got to go along and see all the people do all the cool things. I was like, this is amazing. Oh my gosh, that's so scary. they're so calm. And so that really worked for me. Now, obviously, you can't bring every dev on every security incident, but let's say it's their app that's been attacked. I mean, they're the subject matter expert. Maybe you want to swear them in. Share appropriate secrets. So I was on a team where we did this, and I was like, this is a terrible idea. We should not tell them about mistakes we've made. We should act calm and perfect. But what we did do instead, because I was not the boss, he shared a bunch of things that had happened that we were really concerned about with a team that had been not on board the security train. They're always like, go away, Tanya. I don't have time for your crap and your stupid tests. Go away. And then he gave them this talk and he told them about all the things. He told them, you know, this grandma, we lost her personal information and she was crying as Tanya's trying to show her how to change her banking passwords. Do you want to make grandmas cry? He wasn't that intense, but he was like very clear, like, this is what happens when we have a bad day, right? And then those people were so interested from then on because he showed them like the ramifications of what can happen. I like to let my champions learn everything before everyone else. They are the cool people. They are in the know. We're doing a new policy. May I have your advice? Because you guys are smart. I need to know what you think. Oh, we're getting a new tool. Want to help me choose it? I'm always trying to tell them all the things first because they are special and I want them to feel special. Creating a mailing list. So you don't have to create a mailing list like my friend with all the thousands of people. You can have a mailing list with 20 people on it. And you're like, here's what we're doing this month. Here's a cool new thing that's coming the next month. We're going to have a luncheon on this. P.S. OWASP is doing this month. And I had a bunch of champions over the years come to our OWASP chapter, and it was exciting for me. And some of them now work full-time in AppSec. More. I try to talk to them once a month. Sometimes they're too busy. They're like, I don't have time next month, Tanya. I'm like, cool. If you can talk to them almost every month, you can ask them. So I used to ask them all sorts of stuff. It'd be like trying to chit chat. And then I met this guy named Ray who's obsessed with champions. And he's like, oh, I just asked 3 questions. What are you working on? Are you going to work on next? Do you need any help? And that seemed so obvious when he said that. Like, that's what I really want to know. What are you working on? How can I help? Like, where do I fit into this? Is everything okay? And like, it was so simple when he put it like that. So then I just started, and like those questions are super open and then they lead to other questions. And then also suggested, which I didn't put here, but I really like, help them with whatever you can help them with, even if it's not security. So he was a system architect for a really long time. He's like, yeah, so sometimes they're like, oh, we're just having this problem, we're trying to it's not your problem. He's like, yeah, no, but I'm your guy. What's wrong? I'll come help. Let's do it. And he's like, when I do that, 6 months later, when there's a bug I really want them to fix, they're like, I'll stay late and do it because I helped them so many times. They feel like they owe me. I don't tell them they owe me. They feel like it. They want to give back. Brace yourself for bad news. So I suck at this. I had to learn this. I remember people telling me, okay, Tanya, so it's probably nothing but, and then it's always something terrible. Like really like, oh, come on, I hear about that on a podcast. People don't really do that. They do that. All the things that people joke about during talks, we joke about it because we've seen it so many times. It's very bad. So try to not like yell the word no really loudly, which is what I did the first time. I was just like, no. And then everyone looked at me. I'm like, need to learn to like chill out. Team building events. So if you can let the champions know each other, this might sound weird, but eventually they ask each other. Like I remember seeing one of my champions and they came up to talk to me and it was clear I was super busy. And they're like, don't worry, I'll just ask this person. And then I saw them together doing the thing. So my champion helped my other champion and I could keep doing my work. This is so much win. Invite them to join security communities. So I'd always invite them to come to OWASP Ottawa. And some of them would just come once and they're like, I checked that box, Tanya. But other ones are like, can I just go every month? And so getting people interested and people that I never thought would come. Like super senior level architects are like, I'm coming to the CTF. I want to see what all this fun's about. I'm like, yes. Okay, so now that we've kind of engaged them, so we found a couple people, maybe we have almost enough, we have them somewhat interested, we're talking to them, maybe we're doing a lunch and learn. So what do we teach them? So if you are going to have a champions program, this might sound really crazy, but you should have specific goals that you want to achieve with your program. So my entire goal was I wanted them to run, like my first program, I'm like, I just want you to run this dynamic scanner. And if any of these 10 things are there, fix it before you send it to me. That's all I want. Our stuff is on fire. It's not great. We have a lot of work to do. Help me by just running a scan and then fixing if you see any of these 10 things. And lots of them would just find one or two, whatever. I'm like, please. That's all I wanted. I'm like, I want our security posture to not be mortally embarrassing because that's where we're at right now. And I got it and I was pleased. But that was like a 5-month program. If you want to like run a program over multiple years, you should have goals. And this is going to sound super crazy, but most of the companies don't have a goal. They don't have a specific thing. They're like, well, we want there to be a better security culture. Cool. How do you measure that? What do you mean by better? What do you mean by security culture? They're like, so a thing that's not on my resume that I guess I should add is I've been consulting with this company called IANS Research for around 3.5 years, almost 4 years now. This summer it's 4 years. And what I do is several times a week now. So it used to just be once a week. It was once a month, then once a week, and then a few times a week. And now it's like 5, 6 times a week. I'm like, guys, back off. I have work to do. And basically a company calls me and I just crush their AppSec program. It's super exciting. It's very fun. I have met the AppSec. So almost every single bank in Canada, I've helped their AppSec team. Like most of the names of the places I've got to talk to them. Like really cool places. And that's very exciting. And a lot of them are amazing and some of them need more help than others. But I've worked with 42 companies now to help them build AppSec programs or to help them build security champions programs specifically. And so it is crazy how of the 42, 3 had specific goals that they wanted and everyone else didn't know. There's like better security. I'm like, that's ridiculous. That means if I fix one bug, we're better. Is that what you wanted? They're like, no. I'm like, what do you want? So what you teach them is based on what you want. So where are we going to teach them? So the first thing is just teach them the stuff they need to know. So this might sound really obvious to you. However, so like I give training and the training I give is how to build an AppSec program and how to write secure code. It is not how to hack stuff. It is not threat modeling, which maybe one day I'll be able to teach that. It's not like badass stuff you'd see in a movie. It's like, hey, I see this input, probably shouldn't trust it. What should we do, guys? And then we validate it, make sure it's what we want, make sure it's safe. Is that sexy? I think so. Most people don't agree. But most of the champions programs I talk to, they're like, yeah, they brought on this person and they taught us how to hack. We did all this cool stuff for a week and it cost like $50,000 for the trainer. And we did this and it's been a month. And since that's not our job, all of us forget everything. And also we don't know how to do our jobs more securely, but it was very cool. And so teach them the things you actually need them to know to do the stuff you're trying to accomplish. You like literally so many companies, they're like, you're going to come and do secure coding next month because this month we're hacking. I'm cool, have fun. But unless you're trying to build a team of pen testers, which you're probably not, you don't need that. So just teach them what they need to know. So what you need, expect, and want from them. Like literally spell it out. I remember someone saying, well, they should know that they should report a security incident to them. I'm like, did you ask them one single time to do that? Well, they should know. Has anyone reported security incidents to you? Well, no. I'm like, so do you think they know? They don't know. They don't read minds. They're just devs. They're not mind readers. They build software. Maybe they have other skills. Anyway, it sounds silly, but over and over and over. Okay, so what should we teach them? So they're coders. I want to teach them secure coding. If they design apps, I want secure design or security architecture, depending upon what you're calling it and what you're doing. All of the policies that apply to them, and I don't mean here's a link, read it. I mean, like, let's talk about what this means. Let me teach the thing to you. I know people are like, oh, don't click this link. That's not what I mean. Like if you have a secure coding guideline, you should talk to them about it, what it means, how to do it, how to review code for it, how to test code if that's what you're expecting of them, how to make sure their team's doing the thing. And tooling. And how are we doing on time? We're fine? Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. So 4 topics for champions. So for secure coding and architecture, I have thoughts. I obsess over this. So you can have formal training on like with labs and like learn how to do secure coding. So I feel this one seems pretty obvious, but there's more. So teach them threat modeling. So threat modeling, for those of you that are unaware, sort of like an evil brainstorming session. So you have a security person with their evil black hat on. You have some sort of developer-y type of technical resource, and then you have the business person. It's like, what keeps you up at night? What are you worried about? What could go wrong here? What concerns you? And then usually I ask the developer, if you were going to hack your app, how would you do it? And then they terrify me because their answer is so clear that's disconcerting. And so you go through, you make this list of like potential problems, and you're like, which ones are actually likely to ever happen? And then let's defend against them. Let's make a plan to test for this. Let's review our code, make sure it's not there. Let's change our architecture if we have to, so that these bad things don't happen and we all sleep nicely at night. And so threat modeling is of huge value. And when I first learned, so I sucked at threat modeling. I was a developer. I was really good at fixing. And I was like, I don't know how to break stuff. I don't understand. But as I learned it, you can't unlearn it. So I'll go to the movies. I'm like, I could have got in free. The security's so lax. And you just start seeing holes literally everywhere. And that will happen with the developers. And then they'll say to their buddy, like, oh man, we can't do that. This will happen. Because it's all in their head because you taught them. So security architecture, so this is like whiteboarding it out and talking about potential problems, how to review code. So how to just read their colleagues' code and be like, oh, this is missing or this is bad. How to fix the bugs we find. So this is a big problem. You have this cool security tool. It's like, this is wrong. Okay, what do I do? They're like, fix it. I'm like, what does that mean? So teach them how to find the answers. They believe we should do some sort of training annually. I remember working somewhere and they're like, we gave them training. They should know. And I was like, when was the training? And they're like, 2012. It was 2016. I'm like, so we've had zero turnover? You believe they all remember perfectly 4 or 5 years later? So other things. So your policies. So this is not sexy. I know people are like, oh, policies. I used to think policies sucked until I wrote one. And I was like, why is no one doing it? Don't you know how much time I spent on this? So which policy standards and guidelines apply to them and why? Helps them create missing guidelines. So wherever you work, you have a zillion missing guidelines. Like, let's say someone's like, I'm going to do a new technology, so serverless. It's not that new, but I bet at your work, you don't have specific guidelines or recommendations or requirements. You're going to build a serverless app. Cool, I need these 4 things from you. So provide stuff that they need. Teach them how to be compliant and then help them get there. So the first time I made a secure coding guideline, everyone ignored me. But the third time I made one, the second time there was some stuff, but the third time I met with this team and they all looked nervously and the manager was like, could you just tell us if we're getting fired? Because our apps don't do this. We're really worried we're all getting fired. I'm like, no, no one's getting fired. And they're like, we don't know how to do this yet. Are you going to train us? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay. But they're so scared. And I was like, oh no, I scared my whole team. I suck. Their role during an incident. So I talk about this a lot. It's in the training and all that stuff. If, like, this sounds so silly, but I've had software developers just F up all my security incidents and like ruin evidence and do stuff where I'm like, oh my gosh, what were you thinking? And so teach them what you expect from them in an emergency. I like to let people job shadow me. Not everyone is cool with that. The first time I did it, it was a little terrifying because I'm like, what if they tell me I'm wrong? Like, I'm going to review code all afternoon. I know some of you want to learn more about that. Do you want to shadow me and hang out with me as I do it? Because I'll tell you what's going through my head as I'm doing it. Like, oh, this looks wonky. Next, that technical term, Tanya. I like to hold consultations. I remember my boss saying, don't do that. They'll just tell you what's wrong. Yeah, that's what I want to know. And I remember the first time I did this, they were like, well, this one thing you put, Tanya, that's for Silverlight. We're not savages, so we don't use Silverlight. No one uses Silverlight. That's old, Tanya. What website did you get that from? I was like, oh, I'll take it out. And they're like, really? Yeah, why would I have it in there if it doesn't apply to our organization? And so then we started talking and we rewrote the thing together and then they started implementing it. Okay, last one, tooling. If you want them to use a tool for their job, we want to show it to them. So I like to either, so you don't have to create like videos and stuff, but because things right now are rather remote for most of us, it's really, really easy to record a video. So if you are doing this in a Zoom meeting, I suggest and strongly encourage you to record it, because 6 months from now, when they hire a new dev, they can just watch the recording. You don't have to redo it. But I digress. So if you want them to use it, show them how. This is the hardest one. Explain what the input means. So I remember I was like scanning stuff with a scanner, and I was like, cool, I found this stuff. And they're like, how do you know those are real results? And I was like, oh crap. And I remember the person that was tutoring me, he's like, oh, I just delete the stuff I don't like. Well, what if this is a real vulnerability? He's like, usually nothing. I'm like, how do you tell? He's like, it's fine. And he just like deleted like 3/4 of the results. And I was like, it took me a long time to figure out, well, one, that guy was dumb, but two, like how to check each one. And I was so dumb. Just because you're learning from someone doesn't mean they're brilliant. So what does this output mean? What do I do about it? Like, that's nice you found whatever that is. What do I do about it? How to validate the results of the tool. So this is especially and the absolute most commonly a problem with static analysis tools. And I like really didn't like static analysis because it's hard. And then the tools are maturing and it's better now, but there's a lot of false positives in that area of security. So how do we validate it? How to install it? Like, so let's say you have 1,000 pipelines and you want to put this thing in a pipeline. Are you personally going to install it 1,000 times? You're probably not. So you might want to teach your army of awesome humans to help you do it. How to help them select the best tool. Many times I have had companies inform me, we're buying this because it's the cool one, or it's the one that is the best known or whatever, it's the one that costs a lot, whatever, or they're getting a kickback. There's lots of reasons. But what you want to do is actually select the absolute best tool for you and your team and your company. And I don't care if the other one's cooler or the other, like I've come in and been like, we're getting this, I want this. And then I evaluate a bunch and I'm like, actually, that one's way better for what we're trying to do. So it's important you get the best one and help them find it. Lunch and learns are something where they can get their hands dirty and show them it, let them play with it. Yeah, so coaching, at first it's just a wet cat. So coaching is like a way you can teach, and this works for some people. So if you don't like standing up here, you're like, that looks like hell, coaching could really work for you. So coaching, these are like technical terms, whatever, it means enabling someone to change, right? And so it means you exploring the things that they need so that they can change into, in this case, a security-minded software developer. And so if we want teams to start following the stuff we want, sometimes we have to coach a team. And if we want a person to become our champion and to advocate for us, we have to teach them the things they need. And so if we want them to do the stuff, we got to show them the things. And so, second, there we go, there's the cat. So for champions, so like individuals, I like to set up office hours. So I have this friend named Vane, and you don't live in Victoria, so yeah, everyone knows her. And she's like, I'm Vane and I'm awesome. Let me tell you why you're awesome and we're going to be awesome together. And she says it totally straight face and she means it. And by the end, you're just like, she's awesome. And she set up office hours on one day a week, 9 to 10. And then her office was full. So then it was Wednesday, Thursday. And eventually it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. She'd get it. She's like, I walk into my office and it's like 8:45 and there's already a lineup. I'm like, yeah, it works. So you can set repeat meetings with people where like every Monday at 10, you meet this one person, or every fourth Monday probably. A thing that I like to do is help them prioritize the security stuff they're doing. This might sound really not like it makes sense to you, but if you can help them, so like they're like, oh, I have these 3 things. For you, it's super obvious which one's the important one, but for them, it might not be. So if you can constantly help them reprioritize, you'll get the things done you need done. And be available. So this is the hardest advice on the entire thing, is being available. And so sometimes this means you're like, I'm going to show up to lunch late, or I'm going to do whatever. But when you make yourself available for them, it shows that they matter to you. You help them set goals, and then I help them achieve those goals. I teach them specific skills or tools. And I try to ask what they need, and I try to provide it. I don't always hit that, but I try really hard. And if they see that at least you're trying, they appreciate that. Okay, so a special note on delegation, don't delegate the wrong stuff. So some items shouldn't be the responsibility Oh, so some things you should delegate, some things you shouldn't. So don't fix all the security bugs. I've seen people try to do this. You will never win. There's 500 of them for every one of you. Don't do this. Don't update the frameworks. Don't plan the release or the upgrades. Don't assign which dev does which bug. Don't run every single scan. Don't implement every tool. Don't write the unit tests. So delegate whatever you can to your champions when they're ready, as much as you can, except do not delegate. So specifically validating SaaS results on first generation SaaS. So over the past 3 years since I wrote this, this is updated. There are brand new tools that suck way less. Giving securities approval on literally anything. If you have a champion that's like, I approve that, you got to have a sit down with. They cannot speak on behalf of security. Using new tools without proper training. They like to train the new champ. They can show them some stuff, but you must be like the go-to for the champions. So we're looking for partnership and assistant, but not replacement for our team. There are some companies where they're like, yeah, each champion's going to do 25 plus hours per week for us. I'm like, who's going to go for that? We're looking for 2 to 4 hours per month of dedicated time, and then them doing the security work that their team should have been doing anyway. Oh, that's your screen, not my screen. I'm like, why isn't my webcam covered? What's happening? Okay, recognize. So it is important to recognize our champions. We want them to know that they're doing a good job, that they matter to us, that they value us, and that they're not doing 2 jobs and getting 1 paycheck and they feel underappreciated. So this is what I think of when I think of that. I think of like this cat being like, this is fine. It is really important that they know that we appreciate them. They do not have to do any of this for us at all. And so recognizing and rewarding are 2 love languages. So I'm going to get a bit weird for a minute. So there are 5 love languages. And I remember in one of my job interviews for Microsoft, my soon-to-be boss explaining this and me being like, oh God, no, I don't know. But there's 5 ways that people show that they care. And it's obviously super inappropriate to give shoulder rubs at work. But recognizing and rewarding people are 2 ways that we can show that we care, and it's completely work appropriate. And so we're going to talk about those. So recognizing. So I am a person where recognition's worth more to me than a reward. So rewards are like money and gifts. Recognition is like, good job. I love it. So if you create a certificate to put on their wall, or a virtual background, if you're in a virtual office that says, I'm a security champion, and it's like, people like it. You can recognize them in front of their peers. So if you use Teams or Slack, you put like a little star next to their name. What's the star for? Oh yeah, I'm a champion. Okay, tell me more. Put a note in their performance review. Put a note. This person has been a champion for 2 years. We appreciate them so much. This year they did these 3 awesome things. This shows that you remember and it's important, and you want everyone to know how much this person matters to you. More. Tell their boss when they do good stuff. I remember my boss at Microsoft, he told me that he was not good at recognizing his employees. And we were talking about something. He's like, literally, like every week there's an email from someone telling me you did a good job. I don't know why you feel insecure. Because you never tell me I do a good job. That's why you act like I suck. Like, I'm not good at showing emotions. Did not work out. Did not work out. So tell them when they do a good job. Send the champion themselves an email. So especially if a champion tells you a secret. So I was in this big team meeting and this guy said he's doing this. I'm really concerned about it. Can you do something about it? You might not be able to tell them what happened, but tell them, like, thank you for telling me. I was able to reach out and we were able to get it resolved, or whatever you're allowed to share. But if you can close the loop, people really like that. Tell them, if you're allowed, what happened. Okay, make their role on their team clear to their peers so everyone knows you can go to them and ask a question. So any of those things that you can do to recognize them in front of everyone else, that is what people like me really like. And then there's rewards. So people who really like gifts. So I try to reinforce good behavior instead of punishing bad behavior, because also adults are not going to let me be mean to them. And also that takes a lot of effort, in my opinion. So instead, point out all the good stuff. So anything that you think is reasonable to reward, I recommend you do it. So, okay, so let's go back. Anything, so like, let's say it's like you've been to 3 lunch and learns in a row. Does that sound like an amazing task? No, it doesn't. But I'm willing to give you a bagel if you do it. I used to work at Treasury Board, and I had this lunch and learn program, and they noticed at the end of the year that all the people that kept going, almost none of them took any days off work. And the people that didn't go have a much higher absentee rate. And so, yeah, they're like, oh, that's really cool. What if we got them all to go? And so we made this rule that if you attended 5 in a quarter, so 90 days, we would have 6 or 8 or whatever in that time, you got to have an afternoon off, but you all had the exact same afternoon off. So it'd be 1 p.m. and you'd see us all go together and we'd all walk out together to go do something as a team, and you're not coming. And everyone started going to the lunch and learns, and we got way less absenteeism. People learned more, and it was good. So security related gifts. So this is a double whammy, because not only did you make them like give them a book about security that you're hoping they're going to read, but they feel rewarded. Give them your time and attention. So I didn't used to know this was a thing when I was younger, but I remember this lady came to my desk and I was like typing away, and I was like, just a second. I was like, whew. And then I turned my chair to her and I was like, okay, what do you need? And she's like, wow, usually people just keep typing and they're like, what do you need? Go away, I'm busy. And she's like, wow, whenever I come to your desk, I feel like I matter. And I was like, oh, interesting. So when you give them your time and attention, they know you're super busy because you are a security person. They know that there are 500 of them and one of you. They know. And so when you make time for them, it shows. Help them with more than just security, like my friend Ray. Letting them see cool new stuff first makes them feel special, makes them feel rewarded. Let them help you make decisions. So obviously not very serious decisions. But for instance, if you're like, we're thinking about this for the new policy, I'd really like your feedback. And then you listen to the feedback genuinely. And then sometimes you make adjustments. Or we're going to buy a tool. Like I remember telling the devs at this one place, like in 2021, I was like, we are going to buy a new SaaS. Everyone hates this SaaS. I know you hate it. We still have to do SaaS, but we don't have to hate it. We can find something we like. And we went through 5 tools, and I was like, can I like play with this for you for like an hour or two and see if you, and they, by the end, they're like, I kind of like it. And I was like, okay, they're like, can we keep it? And I was like, yes, we've picked the right tool. If they're asking if they can keep it, this is awesome. They hated the last one. If the last one was a person, they would be shunned from meetings. Yes. CTF, this? Oh, yes, sorry. Okay, so CTF stands for Capture the Flag. And a Capture the Flag contest is like a hacker contest. You have an intentionally vulnerable system, and you're all trying to solve all these challenges, and you get points or flags every time you solve one, and whoever has the most points at the end gets a prize and also gets to be the coolest person at OWASP. So OWASP used to have an annual one. We stopped doing it because Jen didn't keep doing all the work for us. Yeah. Really did.
We are actually. But it's yeah, sorry.
No, it's good. It's good.
Is that yes. We also
You're like, I'm not going anymore. It's a ton of work.
Second part of the question,
Oh, so your gift would be that you bring them to a Capture the Flag, or you hold for all of them and you put in all this effort and they get prizes and compete, and it's fun. It's super fun. Like it's pretty fun. And you learn a lot while you're doing it. And again, it's like you usually get a prize, but it's like the fact that they would put on this giant event for you. It's pretty good.
I want to say something. That so why would
He earned it.
to try to develop some of those skills? Look on the page of the database, like seeing the look on the first. It was a thing because that was the real love.
It's so fun. A bunch of the co-op students came from a place that I was working, and they had no security experience. They didn't know what they're doing. And the challenge was the easiest challenge. And it was just like on the web page, you just view the source and it says password equals, and then had the password. And I was like, well, maybe, I don't know, like you could look at the source. They're like, you can see the source of a web page. I was like, this is gonna take, they took 45 minutes to solve this challenge, and I had to give them 3 hints. But when they got it, they were like, yeah, like they were like the most excited people in the whole place. Like, it's on, we have a friend. It was good. One of them works professionally in security now, this many years later. So yeah, this is a good question. You earned that candy. So anything that you can think of to reward them with, or that is worthy of reward, is good. And basically, we just want to make sure they feel appreciated. That is the key to the recognizing the reward, that they feel appreciated. Okay, so the last one is don't stop. So this is the hardest one. The hardest one. So when in doubt, I like to over communicate. And so if you, for instance, are going to, let's say December is coming, a lot of us wind a bunch of things down in December. So in November, you're like, listen, this is our last one of the year. In January, we're doing this. This is happening here. I'm still here if you need me. Okay. And so maybe you just tell them that, and that's enough. But when you don't talk to them for 3 or 4 months, like, Tanya, who's that person? When is the thing happening? What's going on? Did you guys forget about us? So if you don't communicate regularly, your program will disappear. I've had people say, like, well, we need help with our champions program. I'm like, cool. When was the last time you had a meeting or event with your champions? They're like, a year and a half ago. I'm like, how long did your program run? They're like 6 months. I'm like, so you don't have a champions program anymore, but we can pick it back up. So it is one again. And so it will quickly disappear. And so here are some things. So consistency is key. I feel like that's a little small, the text. I'm sorry if that's hard for you. Consistency is key. So if every single month you do X, try really hard to always do X. Even if you just meet with them once a month to check in with them, so they know that you're interested. And even if some of them can't meet with you because they're busy, just sending them an email and saying, I just want you to know I'm here if you need me. And next month, when your big deadline's over, then we can meet. Some champions need way more time than others, and some of them are better than others. And just because you give them more time does not mean that they're better. And so prepare for uneven needs from them. They're not all created equal. Like I remember my friend Ray saying, I have 30 champions and 2 are total deads, but they're way better than nothing. They're the only one on their team that's interested. They show up and they rarely ask questions. They don't do anything, but I hear about them fixing bugs and I'll take it. If you accidentally dropped your schedule, pick it back up as soon as possible. Even if you just say, hey, I realized we dropped the schedule 3 months ago. Next month, we are going to do something, I promise. I'm still here if you need me. And then next month, you've got to do something. Culture is a practice. It must be repeated over and over and over. And then I think it will fall apart a lot faster than you think. Like the months just flip by. And so of the 42 companies, like so many of them are like, because we'll meet and then like 6 months or a year later, we'll meet again because they'll have done the things. And so many of them are like, yeah, we did that thing you told us not to, where we had like 3 events the first month because we were so excited, and we had 2 the next month. And the next month we were tired, and that was 9 months ago, and we haven't really done anything. So it will fall apart much faster. This is the hardest part. Okay, so we did all the stuff. We're totally awesome. We get to have the cartoon high fives. So conclusion. So we learned how to attract the right people. We talked about what to teach them and how to get them engaged and feel interested. We talked about, oh, how to turn them into advocates for our cause, which is more secure software, what to delegate and what we should definitely absolutely not delegate, how to motivate them, how to build basically an amazing program. Like this recipe works really well. And so this was our recipe. I know I've said it 100 times. So I have a blog series where there's 10 posts about this, and I actually have a new one I'm writing because I can't stop, where I give like more like what exact metrics should you track? How can you do this? More ideas for that, etc. Because I'm kind of obsessed. But for now, I'm going to give you a bunch of resources, and except the books, all of it is free. So I own a small company called SheHacksPurple, and we have a community. And so the address is like HTTPS, whatever, community.shehackspurple.com. There are free AppSec courses, free secure coding courses, free Azure security, infrastructure as code security, etc. They're all in there, and every single thing and every single event in there is free. We're having 2 separate community events this Thursday because everyone loves Thursday. And the OWASP Wrong Secrets people are going to give us a demo. And then No Name Security is going to give us a demo as well, where they're going to like hack a bunch of APIs for us. Pretty cool. And they're separate. We're having one at 9 a.m. and one at noon because everyone wanted that day. Yeah, this Thursday. This Thursday, yeah. Yeah, like we do a lot of stuff. Awesome books. So I am biased, but I love all of these books. And my mom said my book's really good. And so if you like DevOps, you will love these books like DevOps Handbooks, Phoenix Project, Accelerate the Unicorn Project. And they just added to this. So it's a bunch of people that wrote all of those books. There, like Peter Dubois, Jean Kim, Nicole Ferguson. And anyway, they just released a new book called Investments Unlimited. And it is exactly like this, where they're like, stop being so mean to security people. So I'm very excited. And it's like a storybook. It's not highly technical. And so I believe we can't do security right if we are not doing IT right. So if IT is a total disaster, how can you secure it? And so building software with DevOps is the best. I have a podcast. It's just me and other nerds talking about AppSec. I had Sharif on this year, or no, last year. Everyone loved our episode. And so I just have different people on that I want to talk about nerdy stuff with. That's the whole podcast. And then resources me, that looks very small there, but I have a blog, I have a newsletter. My company has a blog and a newsletter, and I do stuff on the internet. And so if it says SheHacksPurple, it's probably me, except for SheHacksPurple.dev, because I have reached that level where someone's impersonating me now. So ignore her. I know it's a dude. But anyway, and she really wants you to look at her cleavage and buy the specific VPN she's recommending. I know, right? That's probably coming. There's also like some sort of online casino thing she's talking. But anyway, most of SheHacksPurple is me. I used to be able to say all of it is me. But anyway, that's me. And so I want to wish that you spend your life doing strange things with weird people, because that is the best wish that someone could ask me or give to me. With that, I want to say thank you very much. Thank you. Yes.
Question to you. Do you think that delivering so many presentation training that I could start using the word security champion?
Like about yourself?
No, start hiring people so I can find those people that went through the training.
Probably, yeah. You could say like, we're looking for a secure developer. If you were a security champion previously, like you would be perfect for this role. Yeah. Awesome. Good question. Back there. And then you. No. I'd love to lie to you and tell you it's true, but usually startups, people are coming and going and all the stuff, and just getting a minimal viable product out the door. Usually me suggesting any security, they're like, that's off. So I haven't worked, like I've worked at a bunch of security startups and they are security conscious. Like I remember at Bright, I was like, hey, where's your SDLs? And it was like security activity, like they took it very seriously because their founders are security folks, but the rest of the startups don't want to talk very much. Sorry, I have a bad answer for you. Yes? Yes.
But it's quite a critical process, specific background,
So not for those companies, because I just talked about their champions programs. But through IANS, I've now worked with over 300 AppSec teams or 300 companies, and mostly I just talk to their AppSec teams. That's all I'm really good at. And it wasn't like a long engagement. It's like an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. And I like, for instance, I'll help them, like they've written a secure coding guideline and I'll like correct things that are wrong and add to it. Or they're like, we're planning on these things, or we're going to buy one of these tools and we want to do this with it. Which one's the best one? I'm like, here's these 10 and eliminate these, and you probably want this, and like this is probably a good one. So no, I have not done that specifically, but this guy has.
So when I work with Apollo, it's software company. Their design of their threats to their software supply chain. The third case typically is nothing software, but they're build their assets. So those are typically now the third case kind of also apply software, but it's typically their product. Whereas the non-software their but there's always the it's a good thing.
Are you going to perhaps give a talk at OWASP this year about threat modeling?
Somewhere from I can stop anytime, but
because I did that at the time that so I know how important the to represent the environment on the data flow. Actually, I will see a bulk of what I do was having to represent the environment. So I have to do this. I'm like, it's a whole lot of work, right?
it is work, but data flow diagrams, which was actually software, structured software design concept from research. It is very useful in this case because you know who knows what when, and you know what your accidents are. There's nothing that I found that compares that especially if you're it opens up all possibilities because then when I go to look at the threats, I know exactly what. It also has been useful. I worked at a company for a brief period of time. Well, it should have been briefer, but I worked at a company where I did data flow diagrams on software because their concept of agile was designing up front was not agile and actually having documents about their design. The only documentation they had on their design was my data flow diagrams and my threat models. So much to the point that new hires would come to me to talk about the design and thank me because that's the only one.
You can also ask them. So like you can have a meeting with them and say, okay, so you have a web app. What does this look like? You got like a front end. Does it talk to a database? Where's the database? Well, and like just ask them as you draw and then take a picture of it because that's way better than nothing that you end up with a lot, right? If you don't have this guy. It's true. Thank you. I just phone a friend if I don't know the answer. Yes?
Model based on a example something that applies.
Like where it is official, definitely you start talking at the top and you tell them you're going to do this. And then ideally, if you have an all staff meeting or a meeting where you know all the developers will be there, you're like, guess what? I'm starting a champions program. This is what this means. I'm looking for these people. Like you can still, and ideally you do have support from the top, but if they're forcing people to be champions, yeah. Yeah. like you can literally set goals for them. In like my first program, it was just, I just want you to scan this and fix these. Like we made literally a little chart. We're like, if you see these things, fix them. Everything else, we don't care. We're just trying to get to like a certain state. And so some champions programs, they're like, we want them to report if there's a security incident. We want to make sure they do the security work for their team. So they're in charge of taking those pen test results and actually doing something with them, or they're in charge of like scanning with these two tools and then like talking about with their team and seeing if they'll fix some of them. And they slowly just start doing a lot of the security work for you. And sometimes they still have to call you like, oh my gosh, this tool did this. What did I do wrong? And you still come help. But you have the, like, there's so many of them and so few of you. That help? Okay.
To build on that.
Mhm. You already got candy though.
So you want volunteers. So okay. Let's say every manager or board, and you're like, if you do volunteer, we give 2 hours per week for security stuff.
Yeah.
Security training. That be something like voluntold and
It's only a good incentive if you get them to actually spend those hours doing that. You're like, see? Yeah. Previously, I had my team do 2 hours a week of self-training. And I think it was like Thursday, like 10 to noon. And I was like, if you don't do it some weeks, it's okay. But I know you, like, you all made a learning plan this year of stuff you wanted. And you all said you wanted to learn these things. I'm giving you 2 hours every week to do it. And so no one would book meetings during that time. And sometimes I would see them and they're going through emails that they really need to get to and they don't have time, but other weeks they do. And so I had this job where I had to stay till 6 because we had to have this coverage until 6 p.m. and I drew the short straw, but nothing would happen after 5. Everyone would be out of the building. And so my boss said, if you finished all your stuff for the day, you can spend the last hour learning. And so for 9 months, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, I would end up with some time at the end of the day where I just had to stay because of the stupid answering of the phone. It wasn't a pager, but you know what I mean? Like that they could reach someone on the team. I finished 3 university courses, 1 hour a few times a night. And I did do some weekend stuff because there was an assignment and I couldn't like not do the assignment. But I spent most of the time at work, just that tiny bit that I had to stay. And so if you remind them about it and you ask them about it, you're like, hey, how's that course going? Oh, you didn't work on it last week. Why not? What do we need to do so you can do that? Because if your team learns more, they'll like working there better. If you train them, they're more likely to want to keep working for you. Yeah. And if you don't train them, they'll keep working for you, but they'll suck. Are there any more questions? Yes. And then you, and then you.
your team and how big is your champion?
So this will be very annoying, but it depends. So like my company now is 4 people. We used to be 7. But when I work with companies, some of them are quite big and it takes a lot of work, but usually there's 2 or 3 people and they split the champions in 2 or 3, and those are your champions. And so you both, or the 3 of you still do the things, but like I'll have like 6 teams. And so there's 6 people I need to talk to once a month. I can know those 6 people well. But I've seen it where the guy's like, well, we have 70 dev teams. Do I have to get to know 70 people? And I was like, that's not going to work. Human beings, apparently, we're only capable of knowing 150 people, the average person, right? So where are you going to like not know half the people in your personal life? Like you just can't actively, and like if you're giving them each half an hour and you're playing, like that's all you'll do. You can't do any of the rest of your job. So it's important that you don't become this great big giant bottleneck stopping everything because you have too many people assigned to you. It's the same actually. So in AppSec, there's this thing called the partnership model. Netflix talks about it a lot. in the government, they call it matrixing someone into a project, but basically an AppSec person is assigned to like 5 projects, let's say, and you like follow the project and you're just like, hey, like you're doing this now, that means you need to do a threat model, let me book that appointment with you or whatever, and you follow their life cycle. But if you get assigned 30 projects, you suck. You're the person slowing everything down. So it's really important that you have a decent number. So you can do up to 20, maybe 30 champions. Anything above that's craziness. And you won't get a lot done if you're doing 30 champions. If you could split that in 2, it's better. 15 is so much more easy to get to know them and build trust. That help, or is that a bad answer or is that not what you were hoping to hear? Was that a good answer, or was that really not what you were hoping to hear? Okay, and then you.
Security champion gamified, and if so, your recommended.
There were 2 companies I saw that really wanted to gamify it, and one of them used, there's this product you can buy called Secure Code Warrior, where there's like different like levels and challenges and things that you learn about secure coding. And then they would give the champions prizes how far they got in that, because then they felt they'd be giving much better, they would be giving much better advice to all of their colleagues, and that they would be fixing more bugs. They don't know if that worked. They said they liked it though, and it made the champions happy, and that's good. So they would give them prizes and things based on how far they got. And then the other one, they had levels to, actually no, 2 of them did the levels thing. So it wasn't quite gamified, but it was like the first 6 months, like you do these things and then you reach level 2. And they had like, it was champions and then advocates and then ambassadors or something. And then they're like, and then when they get to this level, we hire them. And so the reward is like they try their best to recruit you, because like if you're doing this much, like you should be on our team. And so they kept trying to like recruit them at that point. So he was saying they should name it BISO, so Business Information Security Officer. He's like, and then the 4th level is BISO, and everyone's like, we can't automatically promote them just because they get this far. And he was like arguing that they should. I'm like, you can't have 20 BISOs, or probably not. You don't have money. But anyway, the idea was that they would promote them then. And so I have not got to promote anyone like that, but I have seen them move from that role into an AppSec role. And it went pretty good because they recruited from their own team. That's pretty awesome. Okay, are there any more questions? Yes.
I'll have what he's having.
Well, so there's one company I talked to, and they're like, yeah, sometimes there's 2 or 3 people from the same team, and they're like, we don't know what to do. Should we make them take turns? And I was like, I don't know if they'll show up. And like, if they're splitting the security, like if all the security work's getting done, they're not missing a ton of work. If their boss isn't mad, I don't know, does it cost a lot more to have them there? We just let them do it. And like, maybe some of them will run out of steam. But they're like, yeah, it's like everyone thinks it's really cool and we're excited, but we're overpopulated. Like we have too many of them. And so I'm like, well, of the 3 on that one team, you probably need to pick one that's like your prime or so because you can't communicate with all 3 of them about everything about that team. That's a lot of work. I'm like, just don't duplicate work. But if they're excited. Also, he told me that all the lunch and learns were closed and no other devs were allowed going. And I was like, can you afford pizza for everyone? Because like, why not teach everyone about security and then just meet with only the devs sometimes? Like maybe they're just feeling not included. And so they said they were going to open it up, but I haven't spoken to them since that. I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's the one I got. Thank you. Okay, so Gareth, do you know who we should give these books to? I want to give one book to this guy. And you're obviously going to get my book because obviously you really want that one. And then Garth's going to give the threat modeling book away.
So this is okay. So the one you got. So there was.
Yeah. So the history of Alice and Bob is that they are used for examples all the time. Okay, yeah.
Do you have an unadorned laptop? We have stickers.
Yes, we have many stickers. Yes.
All colors. colors, all sizes. So if you've got stickers, you can solve that problem.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for having me.
DevSecOps.
Will they hear him?
Heard that.